Taoiseach, since you lifted the eviction ban in April 2023, more than 20,000 households have gotten eviction notices because their landlord wants to sell. At the time, you promised renters that they would be protected with the tenant in situ scheme. If they were on HAP or RAS and their landlord was willing to sell to the council would buy their home. Taoiseach, that has turned out to be a lie. Just over 2,500 households benefited from the scheme before you gutted it, less than 2 years after it started. And the results are seen in the figures in terms of homelessness, a massive rise from 12,000 in March 2023 to over 16,000 today, including over 5,000 children. You look at the latest figures. In Q2 2024, 349 families were prevented from entering homelessness as a result of tenant in situ. Q2 2025, that's down to 122. Will you take emergency action, reinstate the eviction ban and re-implement the tenant in situ scheme and properly fund it?
Taoiseach to respond.
It's changing. We need to get with that. Deputy Motor Cool Housing Adaptation Grants, talk to the Minister. I'm well aware that we have had very substantial grants. Just make the point to everybody, like, there's never been more capital allocated to housing and to this area. It's enormous funding. We're at limits of the growth in public expenditure, quite significant in terms of the overall fiscal framework. But the adaptation grants are very important for senior citizens and very important for people with disabilities. Rural one-off housing guidelines are necessary. The Minister is working on those to update those because we do need to give greater options for people living in rural Ireland, particularly on their own land, given the cost of housing, that they would be in a position to develop housing for themselves, and given the advances that have been made in wastewater treatment facilities, I think this is something that should be accommodated. And I've dealt with Deputy Ward. We're not normalising anything. We're very clear that we need consistent and sustainable investment in housing, in all aspects of housing in the time ahead. Deputy Murphy, I think if you maintain the eviction ban, you'd suffocate supply, you'd have less houses, and we're not going down your agenda in many respects because we think your agenda would be even more damaging and would not ensure an increase in house building, particularly in terms of the private sector. The tenant in situ scheme has been very significant over the last 2 years, very significant, and it did need refinement, so that it's not used by councils as an excuse just to acquire instead of build. And it has to be focused and targeted at those most in need. And I think, so it was never meant for landlords to sell. The focus was always on tenants who were in danger of being made homeless. And examples have emerged. So, for example, in some local authorities, no sooner was a house acquired than enormous funds were immediately put into retrofitted and so on like that. And that was never the original objective of that scheme. It was to get houses acquired to stop them being sold and to stop someone being made homeless. So councils did not, look, some councils did not operate the scheme now as it should have been operated. And I know the opposition just want to keep on throwing money at every scheme and keep not review it, not examine it and so on like that. So that there are issues that the Minister did examine and found things which were not, in our view, in accordance with the original objectives of the scheme. But the funding, the funding hasn't been, the scheme hasn't been shelved or dropped as has been suggested at all, Sorry, in many of the cases that have been raised, the city councils, and I tested this with one or two, some cases were raised in the House here, they got sorted. Just hold me out a second now, they got sorted because the council could sort it. And they're not helpless either.
Move on then to